Be strong.
Alrighty, well, a very good morning, a very happy morning here on the Throw In with Justin. Welcome you guys to another episode, taking you guys up until 11 o'clock. And man, rolled out of bed this morning, had difficult sleeping, ready for the show. I got ready for a lot of conversations. Hey, baseball's over with. You know what? There's a lot of things going on. We're gonna, baseball's over with, regular season's over with, and now, right now, you would get a chance to set our focus down from 30 teams all the way down to 12 teams. As we and right now, and it's more specifically for this weekend, we got 8 teams to worry about. Right there are 8 teams now in the postseason that we are, that's going to be playing this weekend in the wild card. You got Seattle and Toronto. You got Tampa Bay and Cleveland. There's Padres over in New York to face the Mets. And then Philadelphia's taking on the Cardinals. And so, I came on here yesterday. I was like, man, it was a little emotional. Right? A little emotional because the season comes to an end and we are now moving forward to October baseball. And October baseball is, you kind of know, hey, every game, and I like it. This is the reason I like it. Every game's intense. There is a purpose for every single game now. And that's kind of how, it's kind of played out throughout the month of September. But I want to know from you guys, what did you guys take away, enjoyed, not enjoy from this 2022 season? I think it's definitely frustrating being a Cincinnati Reds fan and watching the Reds drop 100 games on the season. When definitely last year they were just games away from making it to the wild card, and then the year before that they were actually in the postseason. And with the extra team, as we see this year, not 2 but 3 teams are now qualifying for the wild card spot. With seeing 3 teams now, I thought for most teams that this was a big urgency to make it to the postseason. And one thing that you could take away from this season is that the collective bargaining agreement that was made back at the beginning of the year that delayed the first week of baseball, that was entailed and designed and formulated and formatted and positioned to help a lot of these teams that tanked. And unfortunately, and I hate to see this, to say it, to have to own up to it, but the Reds were one of the teams that tanked, and they tanked pretty badly. I mean, you look at having Luis Castillo, having Tyler Mahle, and I get it, injuries provoked from the get-go. I don't know if you want to throw it out. I don't want to ever sit here and put it on the players, because there's no excuses. These are professional players. These players are making big dollars. They should always be in shape, especially when it comes down to baseball, because you think about it, hey, as soon as the beginning of the season, as soon as the year begins, there's unlimited amount of resources. Half of these players are there's the fall league that's starting up. Half of the players, a lot of players go over to cross seas to play in Japan and to play in Korea. and the Dominican Republic, and those shortened seasons. Then basically January comes back and they're coming back in, and you could always go. You hear these players go out to the ballparks, tossing with one another, taking BP. Before they have to report to practice. And so, when you think of how the season unfolded in that first, negotiation of the lockdown and saying, hey, baseball ain't going to be here for a couple of weeks, and we really didn't know the time frame of how long this lockdown was in play. They kind of teased us. They, MLBPA, they teased us a lot. They took a late start. They could have had this all concluded this time last year, right? They could have went through the holidays and really sat down in those offices, held those meetings, conducted those, the new format of the collective bargaining agreement. There was no reason why they couldn't get the job done, when they, before everyone had to report to practice or to the complexes. So when you look back on the beginning of the season, a part of the season, you could blame it on the MLB and on the collective bargaining agreement, right? And it was frustrating. We were sitting around twiddling our thumbs, trying to understand when will baseball kick off, when will baseball get underway. Then you start getting into the spring training. There's a reason why there is a month and a half of spring training games to determine who's your starting 25, to get the bats loosened up. You need about 400 or 500 at bats before the season starts, and even then, that's not good enough. You need to establish, right, who are you starting, 8 out there on the field, who's in your rotation, who's in your bullpen. Do we need to pick up free agency? Who are our younger guys in minor leagues, the guys we're going to sit down to AAA and to AA, that's going to eventually be brought up later on this season if an injury comes into place. See, there's a reason why spring training is as long as it is. You're trying to get in the rhythm of playing each and every day under the atmosphere, under the lights, in front of crowds. Umpires are trying, working on calling balls and strikes and learning that plate system, the new rules changes, broadcast, even with the broadcasting, managers understanding how to manage. Sometimes a majority of that stuff doesn't just click on the first day of spring training, right? That gives you have to give it some time, right? Give it a couple of weeks. You don't have to have all your starters playing. So, then you run into the delay of the season because instead of starting in the beginning of April, you start at the middle of April, and then you have to catch up on some games or some stretches, and it just doesn't feel right. And something fell off this season alone with the Reds, right? Normally you're notorious. The Reds are notorious, in history. They always have the home opener on the first day of the season. Right? They've never had to kick off the season on the road until this past year because of the CBA agreement. And I thought, to myself, that I was like, dude, that's really, it really sucks because there's an energy, there's a vibe that we didn't necessarily get to have the last 2 years. We didn't have the energy back in 2020. We couldn't really do a whole lot because of weather and trying to get out of the pandemic a little bit in the beginning of last year's April, right? Because we couldn't really celebrate it. But there is the energy, the spark, the excitement that brings into the season, especially here in Cincinnati, where we have a chance to appreciate the ball club. So we did it back from there. There's a lot of things that has happened, the ups and downs, the comments that were made with the organization, the unloading of the roster, right? That really played a role. I think, when during the off season, when we got rid of Tucker Barnhart, Sonny Gray, Nick Castellanos, we didn't resign. Eugenio Suarez, uh, you know, when we departed ways with Jesse Winker, I really felt like we were gutted for the moment, right? We were forced to, hey, we have a couple good talents, but not enough on the roster to really get us through, especially after spending some years with these guys. That was really how I put it, that we really got comfortable with seeing night in and night out. I mean, we were really excited to seeing Nick Castellanos return. We were really excited to see Jesse Winker, especially all the stuff that they were able to do last year. Tucker Barnhart's been the catcher for the Reds for the longest time, and now he goes and moves off. And then we don't, and I think the only thing that I was satisfied about about the offseason was the fact that Eugenio Rosales was the person that was left, and I was saying this since last year, is that Eugenio Rosales just never kicked it off. And how long do you wait around on a third baseman when you have guys down in the minors that are looking to come up and they just need at bats and need playing time up in the majors? And it took Eugenio Rosales down into September. Sometimes a new atmosphere, sometimes a new change. You succeed better at him. Eugenio Rosales had a better season this year than he did last year. So one thing I want to take a look at, probably sometime next week, is we're going to dive into the trades that has acquired from the Reds over the past year during the offseason. The Luis Castillo, Tyler Mahle, Nick Castellanos, and Jesse Winker, all that stuff. We'll Tucker Barnhart. We'll dive in. We'll take a look at those careers, their career this season and how well they played. You think about it, Luis Castillo. Where did Tyler Mahle go? I don't think Tyler Mahle. No, he was with the Twins. But Luis Castillo, Jesse Winker, Eugenio Suarez, Nick Castellanos, former Reds players, all going to Raciel Iglesias. I know that was a few years back, but these are all players that have been able to, with their team, successfully approach the postseason this year. So we'll get a chance to talk about that, talk about the comparisons. The offseason is just getting underway. So what we have to start doing now is, we're talking about the postseason. Yeah, there's going to be times where we want to reminisce and talk about the good and the bad of the regular season for the Reds. But overall, we need to start focusing and dialing in to Major League Baseball 2023 for the Reds. Where does the Reds need to focus in on? Where do the Reds need help the most? Starting rotation, relief pitchers. Is it the position players on the field? Is it the at bats? Because I could tell you that there's more than one area that they need help on. And who is returning next year and who is departing ways. I think we need to establish that, who's on the free agent market. And not only that, who fits the main bill for the Cincinnati Reds. I think, that it's one thing to be on a free agent marker and to be I don't know, I'm going to say Manny Machado, right? It's one thing for Manny Machado to be on the free agent. It's another thing for when he decides that he gets to choose what team he wants to be with. And, it's about he's choosing the right team. He's going to choose the team that's going to treat him well. Great fan base for the Reds, from the organization. You have, is he going to get paid right? And is that team going to win? I mean, ultimately, I think teams, players go out there and take their chances with a different ball club because they want to win the game. And you ain't winning with 100 losses on the season. So we'll dive in just a little bit into the season, dive into the goods and the bads throughout today. NFL, I want to take us, we're finishing off in Major League Baseball. We'll also talk about the AL Central today. So I want to talk about the Central and how those divisions kind of, came about, for one moment, in the month of September, you had three teams in the AL Central that was competing, and that turned around so quickly. And in retrospect, I don't even know if the Cleveland Guardians deserve or should have been, the AL Central champions. So we'll take a look into them. NFL Week 4, man, I was just looking at this the other day, yesterday morning, about the Denver Broncos and the Indianapolis Colts as they kick underway for week number 5. And the first thing that I was looking for is the injury report. No Jonathan Taylor, for the Colts, and I know that there's a couple of Broncos players out, but there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. So we'll talk a little bit about what's going on with the with Thursday Night Football, giving you my predictions, and then we'll also talk to you a little bit about the what's coming up in the AFC North and those games this week. Kenny Pickett's going to get the starting position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A huge game for the Bengals again on Sunday Night Football action. I mean, these momentums early on in the NFL is so easy to get behind. I will tell you that. So these momentums and these these little wins and these streaks that you go on really help play along for a long season. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and plus AEW. Okay, couple people got sent home, for being unprofessional last night. One guy, including Sammy Guevara. I'm interested in reading a little bit more into that. And on top of that, what is we've sat here and talked about over, for a while about what happened back at All Out, and we're moving forward. Punk, people are being suspended, people having surgeries, stuff like that. We still have not seen on the anniversary the elite of All Elite Wrestling. No Kenny Omega, no Young Bucks, and it kind of just you kind of just start wondering what is the future for some of these athletes. People are being sent home for unprofessionalism. I think that's something that you got to start taking a look at. The product in the ring isn't bad, but when you don't establish yourself a asset of control in that locker room, you need to give yourself a sense of an authority figure, and you don't have that coming from some of these guys, and you're finding yourself in trouble. I mean, it seems like every month, at least being reported that AEW is having confrontations in the locker room that's really now jeopardizing the product that's being put out there inside that ring. So I think that a little bit of that needs to be talked about. It is Thursday. We are now in focus on talking about and getting ready for Extreme Rules from the WWE that's coming up this Saturday. And I'm really excited to talk about it. I'm really excited for a lot of these matches, and I think we'll start talking about some of it today. We'll wrap that up tomorrow. So, all right, hey, it's a Thursday morning, a little different atmosphere. We're back into the weekend week. We're pushing things forward, getting you guys ready for the weekend. Let's begin. Let's step aside, take a time out, and when we come back, we'll kick you off and finish up the Red season as they lost in a devastating fashion. Losing their 100th game yesterday. We'll tell you all about that when we come back. You guys are listening to the Throw In with Justin on a Thursday here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, welcome back here. 9:25 here on the Throw-In TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel, picking you guys up until 11 on a Thursday morning. I want to give a big shout out and thank you guys to stream with the guys over there at StreamYard Studios for providing a online studio version to create podcasts, YouTube videos, host virtual business meetings, and even conduct their interviews. The TNC Sports Talk is a proud home of Stream, the StreamYard Studios is the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel, first and foremost. And, I talk about this every day because I encourage you guys, if you guys are out there looking to create your own podcast, to create your own YouTube videos, if you're looking to conduct interviews, if you're even looking to host virtual business meetings, they have a free option for you. You can put up banners, you can put up multiple screens, share the screens, and even have guests on at the hands of, dispense of your hands and a click of a button. So check out StreamYard Studios, StreamYard.com, and don't forget to look into their free version for the time being. Alrighty, Thursday morning, just kind of wrapping things up. Reds. I had a hope yesterday that the Reds could have swept the Cubs. You play for pride, you play for dignity, you play. When you're at a record like the Cubs, where you just, you're 62 wins, even the Reds, 62 Reds for the wins for the Reds, 64 or 74 wins for the Cubs, and obviously you knew coming into September that the season, even probably coming into August, that your season was most likely already done. It wasn't going to extend past the regular season. And you kind of just felt a little upset, and you kind of wanting to now approach into next year. And, it was a frustrating weekend where the Cubs lost 3, where the Reds lost 3 against the Cubs. And then coming in, the one thing I wanted to avoid, losing 102, 101, hell, even 100 games. And they were close. Let me put it that way. 15-2, the Cubs win. Here are the highlights for the Cubs and Reds game 162 on the season here, as the season comes to a finale yesterday.
So this inning becoming a real challenge now for Ashcraft. He had 2 outs, nobody on, but back-to-back walks to Horner and Higgins, and it brings up David Bodie.
In the air, right field, going back, Fraley, back some more. That one is gone. Oh, he just tucked it over the wall. David Bodie the opposite way. Number 4, and the Cubs have jumped out 3-0.
Bases full of Cubs. No run in. Bodie already with a 3-run homer today.
Line drive, that's a base hit out into left center, and that's going to score at least 2. Higgins on the move, they'll hold him up as Nico crosses along with Velasquez, and the Cubs have opened up a 6-2 lead.
How about a 5 RBI day for David Bodie so far? We're only in the 6th. He's going to get another crack at least, maybe 2. He follows up his opposite field home run with this double.
McKinstry has struck out, grounded out, and singled. Deep drive to right if it's fair. Get out the tape measure for a long home run for Zach McKinstry. A booming blast, by far the longest ball we've ever seen Zach McKinstry hit. Way up over the bullpen, down the line and right. Only question, would it stay fair? It did, and it was gone by a whole lot. And here is Franmil Reyes.
Bounced up the middle. Oh, it hit the bag. Kicks out into right center. Here comes Wisdom. And Reyes will knock in a run. And it's 10-2.
Look at those baseball gods paying Reyes back. You may recall last time up there, hit one right on the button, but Donovan Solano snared it. Cost him a hit and a couple RBI. This time, smile upon him, and this ground ball bounces off the bag, and he gets an RBI knockout of it.
Higgins the batter. Cubs lead 10-2.
Line drive and a base hit out into right center field. And that's going to roll. Reyes around to score. Neat goes on his horse. Higgins into second. And it's 12-2.
Everybody getting in on the act here this afternoon for the Cubs on the final day of the 2022 season. I have to remind you, fellas, there can only be one Star Baker every week, but we've got key performances going on here this afternoon.
And Chris Morrell, Chase Anderson delivers. This ball is grounded into center field, a base hit. This is going to drive in a run as Higgins comes in to score. And Morrell gets into the act with a run-scoring base hit up the middle, and the Cubs lead 13-2.
Franmil Reyes now, an RBI single his last time. Right field, that one back, and that one is gone. Franmil Reyes the opposite way. Big smile. And he ends his September home run drought. It's 15-2.
Oh my goodness, 15-2. I'm just ready to get that over with. Hey, you know what? The season is done with. They put up some hits on the board. Cubs win 15 runs, 13 hits, 1 error. On the Reds, 2 runs, 7 hits, no errors. And a lot of the runs score coming into the game was the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning overall. Ashcraft goes 5 1/3, giving up 7 runs, 4 hits, 5 walks, 4 strikeouts, and 1 home run allowed. And, probably not the greatest way to end off your season. He moves to 5-6 on his record from a guy who kind of maybe had to step in a little bit this year, been up and down. And I think one of the problems, all right, when it comes down to your starting pitching, especially your starters, when it comes down to the pitching, all right, it comes out of the rotation. You cannot expect a guy that was supposed to be down in the minor leagues majority of the year to do the whole come up and come down. You can't versatile, especially young guys, to go, give you solid outings from the Reds. If you're, he's 24 years old. He's been playing all, half a season this year. He's 5-6, 4.989 ERA in 105 innings pitching. You think that, majority of the year, that's probably a solid outing. But he spent his time between the major leagues and the minor leagues this year. This year alone, he went from AA to AAA, was 3-3 in the minor leagues, 2.58. And there's a big difference between when you hit from minor league to major league baseball. There is a huge difference. And so, it's great to put in the work. It's great to see these guys come up to the plate, tackle on what they need to tackle on, and when, especially help contribute the Reds to some victories. But, you had the same notion, for the routine going on for practically the entire rotation. You never had a solid rotation to begin the season. And it was just so frustrating. That's the same thing that applied to Nick Lodolu, Hunter Green. A lot of these pitchers, Luis Cessa, they were not expected to. They were expected maybe to come up once, maybe twice at the end of the season. But you expected them to kick off the beginning of the season. And when you have, and I didn't think that the rotation coming out of the Reds, coming from the Reds at the beginning of the season was terrible. I just thought, you had Tyler Mahle, Luis Castillo, Mike Minor, Nick Lodolu, Vladimir Gutierrez, Hunter Green in the background, Graham Ashcraft in the background, Luis Cessa in the background. You have about, and with the combination of the front three with Mahle, Castillo, and Minor, you felt confident in sending Lodolu out there and Gutierrez on days 4 and 5. I felt a solid of 70, 75 wins coming from the Reds out of the rotation that they had. Now, when you complicate things with your 2 more veteran starters being out, so you rely on Lodolu, you rely on Green, you rely on Gutierrez to kind of lead the squad, right? Where you have Mahle, Lodolu, Gutierrez to lead the squad. Then you have to throw in Green, Ashcraft. You got to throw in Cessa. That kind of winds down a little bit. You don't have much in the back end, and you have these young group of guys trying to pave way a season that was already shot down to begin with. So the Reds loss gives them 100 games losing season this year. And talking about losing seasons this year, the Reds are among 4 teams this year alone that have lost 100 plus games. And I was just reading some of that in the statistics. See if I can pull it up here. And I was like, dude, this is pretty impressive. Oh my gosh, I don't have it. Anyways, you take a look at some of the 100 teams. All right, the Oakland A's are the only team in the American League to lose 100 games. And, Washington Nationals, the Cincinnati Reds, and the Pittsburgh Pirates all lost 100 games. So 4 teams losing 100 games while 4 teams winning 100 games. And MLB would have set a new record if the Yankees would have won yesterday, but they didn't. So, it's very impressive. It's actually very surprising how we've seen how the game change over the last 10 years, because 10 years ago, you may have one team win 100 games and maybe 2, but you don't see 4, 5, 6 different teams winning 100 games. And when teams win that many games, you obviously have teams that lose that many games. So it's an easy give and take in that sense. So unfortunately, the Reds just didn't finish off the season great. I take this, I'll take the positive note that, we can bounce back. We won the series against the Cubs and we finished off. So the Cincinnati Reds, just out of perspective, 62 and 100 on the season. They are 4th in the NL Central. All right, they are coming out of winning percentage 683, 31 games back from the Cardinals initially, 28 or 25 games back from a wild card opportunity. They were 3-7 the last 10 games on a 1-game losing streak. Runs scored 648 and runs allowed 815 with a negative 167 run differential. They also, at home, they finished off 33 and 48, and on the road, they finished off 29 and 52. Against 500 opponents, they were 32 and 61. So, you would come in here and you think that, hey, season's done with. They lose 100 games. It's not pretty. I take it this way. You win the series against the Cubs, which was the last series of the season, which technically the first series, because they end up moving that first series back. And then, you finished off 4th place. And now you get to go into the offseason, and we're already seeing deals and trades and whatnot coming through. I know I just saw Mike Matheny in Kansas City being fired. There's going to be head coaches being fired. You got Mike Matheny being head coach in, Mike Matheny for the Royals, was let go. La Russa is not coming back. He's retiring at the end of this season. Players are retiring, stuff like that. And so we'll start keeping an eye towards that. But I think that just asks you the question: how did you think David Bell, handled this team on a losing season? How do you think, and like I said, where do you think that these players need to, move towards when it comes down to making changes? Is it the coaching staff? Is it ownership? Is it the, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's, the outfield. So we'll have to dive into that as we move along. But now our eyes are set on to the wild card series that begins this weekend, and we'll talk all about that when we come back. You guys are listening to the Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. .44 here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. And man, listen, the Red season has come and gone. 66 players have played at least one game for the Reds organization this year alone, the second most since the 2003, where they had 57 players. And, let's take a deep breath in. It's a Thursday. It's the day after the regular season. So let's take a deep breath in and let's excel. Let's reset the clock. What we're going to do is give us a few days, a few weeks, whatever. We're just starting the All-Star, the offseason for the Reds. And we know that they got plenty of work with returning Mike Moustakas, Joey Votto, Nick Senzel. We're looking hopefully to return, with Jonathan India, Kyle Farmer, and I think these guys are a solid group of guys. Joey Votto's at the end of his career. Mike Moustakas could step it up. He hasn't really been the ace player the reason why we picked him up to begin with. So position-wise, I think we're solid. Or, I think that we could always add a few more guys in the bullpen or in the dugout as bench players, utility guys. There's going to be hard decisions on what to do with Aquino this year. Tyler Stevenson's supposed to come back. So those guys that we're putting out there each and every night, I'm comfortable with. All right. Yeah, we could use a few more at bats. Yes, we could use a few more defensive players. But other than that, I am comfortable as of right now. It's the rotation because we have no veterans. We have no depth in the rotation. And then the bullpen. The bullpen really disappointed us last year. And I was really, I was satisfied. I'm satisfied overall with what the rotation was able to give us with what they were given to us from the beginning of the season. Luis Castillo, Mike Minor out at the beginning of the season, spent 2.5 months on the IL. Vladimir Gutierrez, Nick Lodolu, two guys who were already came up through the last season, working their way through. They were trying, and Tyler Mahle, let's not forget about Tyler Mahle. These were guys that, that you felt comfortable putting out there, but they didn't belong at the top of the rotation. And then you throw in rookie guys like Hunter Green and Luis Sessa and Graham Ashcraft. Great guys, I think great developing guys. But the problem is that you're putting them in a position where you have to kind of force their hand into, hey, I got no veterans for you to go off of. Normally, you could get Hunter Green in a one-on-one conversations on a day-to-day basis with Luis Castillo. And each time Hunter Green, Luis Castillo pitches, you could have guys like Ashcraft and Green and Lodolu sit down in the dugout, watch him, watch his techniques, watch how he handles certain situations. And when you don't have that because either they're injury, because they're due to injuries or because they're traded, what do you have to go look for? Okay, you're going to look for one another, which you guys are on the same level. When Lodolu and Hunter Green, they're looking among each other because they're put together. They're one-on-one. They're evenly matched. They're not far from apart. Luis Castillo is up at level 10 while Hunter Green's at maybe level 3. So, there's a lot to learn. And I think it's important to get depth into that bullpen, rotation. At least 1-2 solid key starters that you can rely on every 5 days. That when you go out there and you felt comfortable, right? I felt comfortable that when each time Luis Castillo came out onto the mound, that you were able to get a solid outing from him. I was comfortable out of that. I was comfortable with Tyler Mahle. I was even getting comfortable with Nick Lodolu because we were seeing the repetitions. But with these younger guys having to now come in, and we know that the future we don't know if the Reds are going to go pick up any veterans for that rotation. So we are going to have to continue to work with these younger guys. Now, what's good on this season is that you have an eye. Now these guys have a taste of what the major leagues look like, what they provide, what it brings to you. So it's important to relay that, learn from it, and with a veteran, maybe 2, hopefully 2, at least, you can have something lined up where this next year's starting rotations much better. And let's not forget, because that's the same thing that goes with the bullpen for the Reds. They didn't have a great bullpen, and if it was either the Reds starting pitching sucked and the bullpen was great, or the rotation was amazing and the bullpen sucked. Just in yesterday's game, in the bull, you sent Ashcraft out there for 5 1/3. You gave him, you let him do everything he possibly can. Gave you every last out and last pitch that you could possibly give him before you took him out of the game. And I respect that. Okay. But most of those runs was also thanks to the hands of the bullpen. Now, there was the veterans that came in, not many veterans, that came in that did not perform the way that they used to perform in other years. So I think yet again, that's another key issue, is that you need your rotation and your bullpen to be synced. And not at one point this season that they were synced. And the only reason why the Reds, on the days that your rotation was good, it was because also the Reds put up runs. And, and when the bullpen was sluggish, and if you were able to win the game, it was because the Reds put up enough runs to where the bullpen just couldn't allow, 3-4 runs to come across to, change the game's complex. So there's a lot, we dive into the offseason. We'll look at the pitching staff, what if anything needs to be changed. And I don't know if it will be changed, and I don't know if the Reds are one of the teams that will be changed. But, the CBA agreement, the way that this is formatted, we're not supposed to – we're really – it was designed so that teams that tanked couldn't tank, right? That's the whole reason why we added another team, position slot to the playoffs this year, because we wanted to give every team that opportunity to win the ball, to make it to the playoffs. And yet you still saw teams like the Marlins and like the Pirates who really just tanked their teams. And you could even assume that the Reds tanked, with their performance, losing 20 of the last 26 games of the season. That's not acceptable, right? That's not acceptable from a fan base. That's not acceptable from a player point of view. That shouldn't be acceptable from an organization. So we'll take a break. We'll breathe a little bit, maybe take a couple weeks to decide, all right, before we really relook at what the offseason has in store for us. And, we'll be paying attention to all the news and highlights. And I'm interested over this weekend to see if anything happens. And I don't know, our teams are going to jump ahead and really start trading and dealing and wheeling, to become a better team. But, we know one thing for a factor is that the Reds did not finish off with the great season. All around the board, between the front office to on the field, underperformed, and we expect a lot more coming out next year. All right, you guys, postseason is upon us, and we have our matchups, and we actually have our times and dates for Friday, at least, I believe. And we'll talk about just Fridays for the moment, because what I'll do is tomorrow we'll talk more into Saturday's times, and then if they have Sunday's times, now I'm hoping I really want to call a couple of playoff games, and I really want to call a couple of playoff games. Probably Saturday I'll probably call one, and hopefully maybe Sunday if a game is upon us. Now times are subject to change, especially on Sunday, so we'll stay tuned with that. But not many pitchers are scheduled to pitch, but Friday we have 4 games in front of you, right? We got all but one, but the Cardinals, who have decided what pitcher they're throwing out there for game number 1. Coming up, the kicking of things off at noon tomorrow, the Tampa Bay Rays take on the Cleveland Guardians to begin that 3-game series. You got McClanahan taking on Bieber, first pitch 12:07. Following that, and a matter of fact, is going to contribute in the midst of that one, the Phillies take on the Cardinals on ABC. So the 2 wildcard games is going to be available on ESPN. And the second game starting at 2:07 is Philadelphia and St. Louis. That's going to be on ABC. The 4 o'clock game between the Marlins and the Blue Jays, you got Castillo taking on Manoah. And then for the nighttime game, 8:07 p.m., the Padres throwing out Yu Darvish taking on Max Scherzer and the Mets. Remember, we called that game back on Saturday with the Mets and the Braves, and then he had a really, really good outing. Not least, and it was a tough loss, but that the I had it up here. I don't know if I have it saved under my photos. I don't think so. But that the Mets have held the NL East all but 8 days of the entire season. That's crazy to just think of. Between the Mets and between the Braves, right? Between Mets and the Braves, I'll just talk about this. I posted it up. I know I did that. If I can find it. The Mets have held days in first place from the Mets was 175 days. Days in first place from the Braves, 8 days, and yet the Braves took the National League East not by surprise, but they had to do a lot. And so it's gonna, does this take effect on the Mets because they've been on a little downstretch as of late? The questions going into this postseason, this wild card weekend. On top of that, let's not forget about, what do we think about Toronto Blue Jays? They just got off of a doubleheader yesterday, so they're on a short stretch now. They were on the road. Not only that, they had to go back to Toronto that last night, and they're probably tired, and they're probably going to is that going to thrive them and slash them into this weekend for a success with the Mariners, or could we see that affect the Blue Jays, costing them the wild card series? So we'll those are questions that we want to look into throughout the season. But hey, listen, I want to first of all just say thank you to everyone who's followed along the Reds. I know it's been a tough season, and I know the Reds say thank you, and I want to say thank you as well because it's been a tough season, and we've had to sit back and we had to watch Milwaukee and St. Louis kind of just surprise us. And talking about finishing up on the NL Central here before we dive into it. Matter of fact, you know what? This is perfect because we're talking about the AL Centrals and the divisions. We're actually going to talk about that to begin hour number 2. So we'll get a chance to talk about just where we thought that the AL Central should have gone and our thoughts. All right. All right. Let's finish off hour number 1 here. Hour number 2 coming up next. We still got AL NL Central comparisons and thoughts. We have that's the last thing we have. We want to get into Thursday night football, start talking about that. And then also AEW. Listen, it has been a struggle, I think, in the locker room as of late for AEW athletes. A lot of confrontations, sent home Sammy Guevara, as well as Andrade, or just in last night, another confrontation. It seems like they have that more often than not. So I want to talk a little bit about that. We'll get a little bit into Extreme Rules, talk a little bit about that. Busy hour number 2 coming up next. You guys are listening to the TNC Throwing on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, kicking off hour number 2 here with the throw-in. Justin, that's me, on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Hey, if you guys miss any episode, any segment, you guys want to go back and listen to us. Maybe you guys are at work. Maybe you guys are driving in the car. You want to make sure your focus and attention is to what you guys are doing. Be sure to tune into us. Download us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and more. Thanks to a big shout out to Spreaker, who's made that all possible. And if you guys are doing your own podcasting, YouTube videos and all that stuff, you guys looking to get a little monetized and everywhere, check out Spreaker.com. Great ability, great distributions all over the platforms. And I've been using it thanks to Steve Barber over at Armchair Booking Podcast. And while you're there, you guys can check out, download on our audio platforms, the throw-in, and also check out Steve Barber, Dwaylen Davis, talking about professional wrestling. I had a recent episode earlier this week is about traveling and all that stuff. So check them out, Armchair Booking Podcast, and also the throw-in here. Alrighty. So, listen, we're going to leave the Reds behind us because we want to talk about and move forward because, hey, the wild card weekend is here. And, both the AL Central and the National League Central has had probably a difficult season. Okay. And the National League Central, I think we'll kick things off over there. I think the top two teams that we knew from the get-go was Milwaukee and St. Louis. I think that's undeniable. Listen, I mean, I was very, I became an Albert Pujols fan when he went to Anaheim. That was just my nature. That's how I contribute. That's how I kind of became open to him. Otherwise, he was a thorn in the, side of you every time he went down to San Diego. And it was the dynamic trio between Albert Pujols, Adam Wainwright, and Yadier Molina. Each and every time you'd had to go face St. Louis. And, it's one of those things where St. Louis has always been a good baseball team, right? Even the years that they don't make it in. And it's going to be, and it's one of those things where, when you hear, if you're any other baseball team, right, and you hear, hey, you got to go face the Dodgers, hug. You got to go face the Cardinals, hug. You got to go face the Red Sox or the Yankees, now the Astros. It was like a drilling sensation every time you heard you had to go face the Boston Red Sox, the New York Yankees, the Houston Astros, the New York Mets. Watching the Nationals was at one point a big ugh in the season. The Philadelphia Phillies, just because they're always at the top of the chain in talent, and they've always given you a difficult run. So the Cardinals was a big part of that. Growing up, especially as a Padres fan, every time you heard, we've had to face the Cardinals in the postseason when we won the division, and we still didn't last. And listen, let's forget about the 2020 season where the Padres finally beat the Cardinals, and then they went on to lose to the Dodgers. New test, new formats, great. But, I mean, overall, I just find it, it was a kind of a thorn in the side if you were, if you're facing the Cardinals, and because you had these players, and even after, Pujols went on to, Anaheim and joined the Angels for the 10-year span, we always knew that the home for Albert Pujols was St. Louis, and he was never going to be forgotten. And to see Pujols, to see Wainwright, to see Molina back at it again, I think it was a big set up for disaster when the Reds had to go in and play them, because we didn't have matching talent to go compete with St. Louis Cardinals. We have a little bit more matching talent to go compete with the Chicago Cubs, with the Pittsburgh Pirates. So you felt more comfortable facing that division of those teams in the division. But every time he went up against Milwaukee, listen, Milwaukee handed our asses on a silver platter last year. They did the same thing this year. St. Louis. So it was a little emotional this year watching these three, compare. And it's one of those, it was one of those things because you're not in St. Louis, because you're not following the Cardinals so closely, and they were kind of quiet the entire year. They were making a splash, but from a distance, right? They would go back and forth with Milwaukee several times throughout the year. I've always thought that Milwaukee had another division in them. I didn't even know that St. Louis would have, even won 90 plus games. And how can you not hate or despise the Cardinals going to the postseason because of these three men? Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina, perfect 1-2 punch combination as pitcher and catcher. And then the historic moment of Pujols going 700, hitting a 700 home run at Dodger Stadium a couple weeks ago. Then you go on, he goes on to surpass Babe Ruth in the RBIs. And, then you find out last weekend or last Sunday against the Pirates that all three of them would just walk off into the sunset fashionably. How often can you really write that script over and over? I mean, as much as you could put that over and over again in your head, right? You had Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright becoming the two most, the pitcher catcher dynamic duo, being in, how do I put it? I put it somewhere. Let me pop this up real quick. But the dynamic duo, and you have these guys surpass as the most starting catcher-pitcher combination. Then Albert Pujols goes on to hit the 700th home run and then bypass Babe Ruth. They clinch the NL Central, and now, they get a chance one last time they get one last time at the postseason. And they'll get ready to face the Phillies starting tomorrow night. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that I'm rooting for the Cardinals to win the World Series. Obviously, the winner of the Phillies and Cardinals will have to go on to face the Braves. And if you could beat the Braves, you have to go on to face either the Dodgers or the Mets or the Padres. But, it's a little emotional. Career stats, final tally for Albert Pujols here, all-time career. He's fifth in games at 3,080. He's ninth in hits, 3,384. He has hit 703 home runs, fourth in the all-time record. RBIs, he's second, 2,218. Extra base hits, 1,405. Third, he's ranked third. Second in total bases, first in go-ahead home runs with 263, and first in pitchers home runs against 458. And so as we look back and we celebrate, the career of Albert Pujols, Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina, there'll be a lot more stuff on that. The first half comparison, just in Albert Pujols alone, match up pretty evenly. 53 games, 55 games, all that stuff. So, I mean, I got much more to say over than, good luck to the Cardinals in the postseason. I think this is, whether they win or lose, I think this is a season to remember. This is kind of walking off into the sunset. Milwaukee, definitely a deficit that they didn't make it in, but happy that they didn't make it in. As a division that we talk about the Reds often, we don't want two teams representing the NL Central, right? It's not fair. But good luck to the Cardinals. All right, over there in American League Central, I want to take a look at, this was an actually very close matchup up until a couple weeks ago, where somehow Cleveland just ran away with this. And I don't know if Chicago and if Minnesota, especially Minnesota, was running out of gas, and Minnesota was leading the division. I was a little worried about how the outcome of the White Sox was going to, partake, just because they were not, they were kind of struggling all year they come up, they could finish off 500 to say, but Minnesota and Cleveland was the two top teams in this division throughout the majority of the season. And Minnesota was actually leading majority of the season too. It reminds me of the NL East. And then, the series where in September, where Cleveland faced Minnesota, and then, in several games, a matter of fact, and then they got to go on to face the White Sox, and they just dominated the middle of the September, and Minnesota just fell apart from there. They finished off 78 and 84, 14 games back, and it kind of was like, this wasn't a winning team to begin with. They finished off at home 46 and 35, but they just couldn't muster up enough wins on the road. And Cleveland really showed the entire Major League Baseball that, hey, listen, it is about the end of, how it goes to. It really shows just how much a team really wants it in that month. We knew coming into this division in September that only one team was going to make it to the postseason, and that is, obviously that is now, and it was up in the air. It could have been the White Sox, it could have been Minnesota, or it could have been Cleveland, and Cleveland took care of Minnesota like that. Cleveland took care of Chicago like that, and now at least we have one Ohio team standing at the top of their division and leading in. So I'm pretty excited, and I'm pretty happy about the Cleveland Guardians making it into the postseason. Do I think they deserve it? Hey, they played better baseball in the month. I feel it's kind of hard because we look at all these divisions, both on both sides of the division. The Central didn't look so impressing, and it feels like that's each and every year. Yankees were one game shy of 100, Astros 106. I mean, both the Braves and the Mets are 101, and the Dodgers are 111, which is stupidly crazy. So the Cardinals will go on to take on the Tampa Bay Rays in the wild card series as we get ready for that. And we'll come back again tomorrow and kind of give you my thoughts about the West, both National League and American League. Anaheim Angels is one of those teams that they didn't finish off that great. They were 73-89. I mean, better off than Texas and Oakland. They finished off third. But that margin gap between Angels and Anaheim and Los Angeles and Seattle, man. I mean, and the same thing that you could say for the Dodgers and the Padres. I mean, the Padres are just 8 games above San Francisco at the end of the day, right? There's a 22-game gap span between the first place team and the second place team. And for Houston, there's a 33-game gap span between the Astros and for the Angels. Now, I think this refers right back around to the CBA agreement. I know we got to cut to a break, but I want to point this out there because we're wrapping up baseball, right? There are divisions out there, right? When you sit down at last place and you're 46 games behind, 43, 46, that is a complication. I mean, when you're that far behind in a division and the CBA agreement has adjusted the division where to give these teams more of an opportunity, hopefully in the next few years, we see more of a competition, which actually, it hurts my head at the end of the day, but I really, really enjoy it. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk some Thursday night football. We'll get you ready for what's going on in the NFL in week 5. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be right back.
Sé lo que quiero, verme abajo, pero no puedo, Nunca confunde el amor, la plata y las mujeres, vicio los fajos y los placeres,
Thursday night football is in action here. Week number 5 kicks off with the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Denver Broncos. And I'm going to be straightforward with you guys on this notation. I'm not very impressed with this Thursday night football game. Last week between the Dolphins and the Bengals, there was something to fight for early on. And I mean, maybe because it's early on in the season, and that's why I'm finding it difficult to find something for these two teams to really play against and to play for. And I got one opinion. They both of these teams have something to play for, but they're just not that impressive to sell me on, hey, I got to stop what I'm doing to watch Thursday night football. Right? I tell you guys this each and every week, and I will preach to this, and it's my firm belief until the cows come home, at the end of the day. Right? Thursday night football is the stepping stone. It sets the way for how the NFL weekend is going to unravel. All right, we saw last week, and just a comparison, Tua Tagovailoa got injured last week on Thursday night football. The Bengals beat the Miami Dolphins last Thursday on Thursday night football. How did that prevail itself into the NFL week number 4? Let's take a look back at that real quick, because I think that's important, right? I mean, the AFC North dropped all of their games last week, helping and now sparking up that division, because coming into this week, it's anybody's game. Minnesota went over to London with the Saints and beat them 28-25. The Bills surpassed and now looks to dominate the AFC East, especially after Tua's injury. Cooper Kupp and the Dallas Cowboys are looking to return back. They're going into the Rams territory. The Chargers finally get back up on a winning track. The Colts drop another game. I mean, the impact of Thursday night football paves the way for how the NFL plays in that weekend. All right. The Buccaneers. Tom Brady had another incredible game, but the defense lost the game for them. All right. The Rams mustered up 9 points in a loss to the San Francisco 49ers. So you think, just imagine how this week would have turned out if Tua Tagovailoa never got hurt. All right. The concussion protocol would have stepped up, wouldn't have been so, particular. The injury protocol wouldn't be so particular. You're forcing the hands of NFL officials to really step up their game and to really take a thrust into making sure these guys are protected on the field. That doesn't, what was Tua's win could have affected the Bills' victory last week. Arizona picking up a victory over Carolina. So there's a plenty of reasoning behind this on just how the outcome is. And coming up this Thursday, coming off both teams losing in week number 4, you dive into there is a couple things that we want to look out for on Thursday night football, but it just doesn't gravitate my attention to, hey, let's stop what I'm doing, let's turn into the game. And I think there's a lot of people that are going to turn into the game because it's Thursday night football for one. There's no baseball for two. We get ready for the playoffs tomorrow, and that's pretty much it. That's all I can think about. I mean, unless there is a college football game that you prefer turning into and looking at. I mean, I don't know. Is there a game on tonight? Yeah, there's a couple of games on. Well, no, there's no games tonight. All games tomorrow. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But, I mean, okay, so let's dive into why do we want to look at the Colts and the Broncos. All right, let's start off this way. It's going to be on Amazon Prime. So if you don't have Amazon Prime, or if you're not locally, you're not going to watch the game. All right, the Indianapolis Colts come in 1-2-1 on the season, as the Denver Broncos are 2-2. So pretty fairly equaled up. All right, fair shot. The last time they met was October 26, 2019, where the Colts beat the Broncos 15-13. So I'm not really expecting this game to be like a 35-33 game. I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting it. I'm probably calling it about 24 to 28 points Denver, and about 17 to 24 points Indianapolis. All right. I do have the Colts, the Broncos favored in this game, but this is a reason why. All right. For Matt Ryan and the Colts, this is a division in the South that it's been notorious for not playing well. I mean, we would have saw if Matt Ryan and the Colts were any good, we would have saw, the Colts be 3-1 to kick off the season. Well, guess what? They're not even at 500 because they had a tie in week 1, which I think, it doesn't do you any good when you tie. I don't think of it as a win. I don't think of it as a loss. I think of it as a game that was a failed opportunity to get to be on top of this division. You take a look into the South standings just real quick. Jacksonville sits on top 2-2 with Tennessee right behind them. Houston Texans are 0-3-1, and you sit in third place. Now, yeah, you're one game above, but just go back to where the schedule plays this week. And here's a factor for the Colts. All right, you have the Jaguars taking on the Texans at home, which I'm actually confident in the Jaguars picking up the victory. And Tennessee, well, they're going over to Washington, who lost to the Cowboys, who are 1-3. Well, guess what? If Tennessee can, I think, Tennessee and Washington's a good game. I'm going to throw Tennessee out there to win this game. They're 2-2. Why not? I take that little chance. So coming in to this individual Thursday night football matchup between the Colts and the Broncos, the Colts, they're going to have to not only win this game to stay alive early on, but they're going to have to go one above. And you're facing the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson, who has a little bit more to prove to the NFL than what the Colts does. I mean, if the Colts lose, it's whatever. All right, Matt Ryan, it's whatever. No biggie. We'll move on. We'll advance to the next day. I'm okay with that. If it's the Broncos, Russell Wilson, he loses this week. I think people are already pretty concerned about the Broncos and this coming up season. You don't want to get behind Denver or Las Vegas. You're already neck and neck with the Chargers. You're trying to follow up on the Chiefs here who are dominating the West. I mean, this is the West. I've told you about this at the beginning of the season, that this is a division to look out for with all these quarterback star power. Russell Wilson hasn't been playing great, and this is the game under the spotlight that is in the front and center, and it's not Monday Night Football. It's not the back end of the week. It's the front and center of the, week 5, that it's time to set the tone. It's time to set the Broncos' turn and how they're going to have the season, come up with the season. They're in Denver. They're at the Mile High Stadium. All right. The altitude is much different. I don't know what the temperature is going to be like, but there's more perspective or more intel for the Broncos to pull away with this victory than the Colts do. Okay. And the Broncos are just not ranked that high, right? I mean, the Colts for some reason are ranked 10th. I mean, in the, in passing, but 27th in division. I mean, their Broncos are ranked about a 500 football team, right? And although, defense, the Colts are ranked higher on passing, the Colts are ranked extremely high. Rushing is all the way down. And yes, offense, the Colts are ranked higher. But here's what you're going to run into this weekend. You don't have Jonathan Taylor, so the rushing game's out. And what about for the Broncos? What about their injuries? Because they don't have there's plenty. This is a banged up Colts team, and then the Broncos are trying to be banged up or starting to be banged up, and you wonder just who's going to prevail. I think that the run game is going to get started for the Broncos. I think that they're going to be able to get out, turn an early lead, and keep the lead. I think it's going to be a little difficult. You're going to find it difficult for Matt Ryan to little score in this game, and I may be completely wrong coming into tomorrow's show. But I strongly believe that the Indianapolis Colts is going to lose to the Broncos tonight. So that's my prediction: Broncos over the Colts. That is just Thursday night football. Couple key games that you do maybe pay attention to as we head into week number 5. Pittsburgh, all right, in the AFC North, taking on the Buffalo Bills. I mean, yes, Bills beat the Ravens. They're most likely going to beat the Steelers this weekend. But you're also keeping a look out for Kenny Pickett because Josh Tomlin says that they're going to throw Kenny Pickett out there. Now, I'm not going to compare him to a Ben Roethlisberger. I think it's premature to compare Kenny Pickett to Ben Roethlisberger. But you got to, if Kenny Pickett's going to be your future quarterback, this is the time for at least the next 4 to 6 weeks to give him the reins and see where he is going to stretch out. He's going to have to face some of these good teams, and this is the only test to see just how good he's going to be with the team that the Steelers put together. So staying patient with Kenny Pickett, I think, is key. Also, the Chargers are over in Cleveland. It doesn't seem like the Chargers could get onto a rhythm. Now, Jacoby Brissett, he's been average throughout the season. And, the Browns have everywhere chance, shape, or form to beat the Chargers on Sunday. And, proclaimingly, you have the Browns sitting a much better on offensive, defensive rankings. And the Chargers, somehow lost, pulled away with the victory last week against the Browns. Well, not last week, but last season. But I don't know, man. I don't know if we go into Cleveland, it's going to be a vice versa. In this, I just don't think the Browns are going to win this one. I think the Chargers are going to walk away and they're going to have a successful game. A game that I am actually intrigued to watch out for is the Texans and the Jaguars. Earlier this week, there's been a few reporters going out there and already claiming that the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence are going to run away with this division. All right. Now, this all depends, how Tannehill's does in Tennessee. That's all how if Matt Ryan can finally figure something out in Indianapolis and get onto the pedal. Now, I predicted that that the Colts were having a better opportunity to win this division. And I feel like the South team is going to be just as terrible as it was the last few years. And it's going to lead into some complications. And I don't see why, if Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars can have a solid season in the path that they're ranked at now, how come they can't win the AFC South? So the Jaguars and the Texans, another impressive game to look into this week. And we'll go over through some more. We'll take a look at the Dolphins, who don't have Tannehill, who doesn't have Tagovailoa, over the Jets in New York. Teddy Bridgewater. Are you worried about how that season is going to progress? I mean, a little bit. I don't think that the Dolphins are going to win just as much without Tagovailoa. But I mean, there's a lot of people out there saying that Tua should be retiring here after what happened to him last week. All right. And it's going to be very difficult. I'm definitely interested. I'll be fascinated to see what kind of quarterback is going to be out, or what type of doctor is going to be out there to sign the quarterback Tua to ever return back to the NFL. It's one of those things where I kind of want Tua to return when he's healthy to at least play the rest of the season, and then maybe he'll retire, because now every game that he goes out there from here on out, one wrong hit could damage him even more. So, and then don't forget, we got to talk about Sunday Night Football, the Bengals, the Ravens. This is an opportunity for those Ravens to, listen, it's an opportunity for the Bengals to get above the Ravens. And I think that's a key point. What we saw last week was John Harbaugh, and the Ravens, it's a go big, go home scenario like each and every year. And they rather, go for it than to pick up the easy points. And it's all about playing smart football. You're going to Baltimore, and now you're just sitting back and waiting on, all right, let me have a solid game. And if I could put up 17, 20 points and wait for the Ravens to make a mistake, and whether that's a pick six or a missed field goal or a missed fourth down attempt, especially when they should have chose a different option, then that's what I think is going to prevail the Bengals to win on another nighttime game. It was Sunday Night Football. And then Thursday Night Football, we got the Raiders and the Chiefs. And, defending, AFC champs once again, and the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes is the baby goat. Right? I think that's been pronounced around, the league over Tom Brady. And just as much as you don't vote or don't pick against Tom Brady, you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs until proven otherwise. I mean, it's just like you're starting not to bet against Josh Allen and the Bills. So, all right, let's take our last break. Let's transition to a little bit of wrestling as we get ready for Extreme Rules this weekend and some more controversy lingering around in the backstage area of AEW. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? We'll talk about that here next on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Have a big shout out to Epidemic Sound that provides the royalty-free music here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Discover your world's artists, composers, and bands. Find the perfect soundtrack and give your social media accounts the music they deserve. Epidemic Sound, royalty-free musically. Check them out at epidemicsound.com. Thank you so much, Epidemic Sound, for providing unique, entertaining music for the program. Wrapping up the show here on a Thursday. And, we don't talk a lot about wrestling as of late. It's been all about baseball. It's been all about football, just because those are the key highlights of what's been going on. And I don't want to get too much into some of the stories that, I don't know about. But one of the things that really just over the last couple months is, just the impression of how it's the impression of how just the simple notion of the backstage brawls and the uncontrollable scenery that backstage of AEW has. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I want to hear from you guys. I mean, there has to be some sort of order. I get it. Not everyone is going to be happy with everything that comes across their table in professional wrestling. Sometimes, here's the way I think about it. I know there's a lot of professional promotions, wrestling promotions out there that try to appease each and individual as they are. But here's where it gets again, because I'm going to relate back to a little bit of NWF. I'm not going to, you're going to get matched up with guys that you like, the guys that you have great chemistry with. And I get that, right? I mean, that's what puts on a better product when these athletes could get on the same page and they could go out there and put on a great show. And I'm 100% on board with that. I agree with that. But at the end of the day, this is your job. This is your profession. Sometimes you're going to have to get into things and say things that you're not going to want to do. You're going to have to get in the ring with some of the athletes that you don't want to get in the ring with. You're going to have to cut promos and say things about athletes that you don't want to get. But at the end of the day, whatever you do, it needs to be left out in the ring. It can't be taken back with you backstage unless it's business related. And yet again, we come out, it's the same thing that, CM Punk, and maybe I say this is both wrong ways. All right. CM Punk should never talk negative about the company, although it's best for business. We see sometimes we've seen it with MJF all the time when he talks against the company. And I don't know how much of that is, reality or how much of that is just part of the gimmick and the storytelling that MJF is so brilliantly telling people. But it makes you think about, okay, what is going on in the backstage area? Is things in order? And when CM Punk went out there the other after All Out, and he goes out and makes comments about each individual, I feel like that's wrong. When you're speaking against the company at a press conference, I think it just needs to be about your match. It needs to be about, the opponents out there, whether you like them or not. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But you can't really start taking shots on people who, on individual names. All right. And so a part of me back at that whole press conference incident and that whole brawl, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, they're wrong. Listen, you got to take it with a grain of salt. People are going to talk positive and negative about you. And you know what? Let me tell you what. it's only the negative things that most people really are going to talk bad about you. So the Young Bucks, can you imagine, listen, I get it. You're standing up for yourself. You're standing up for AEW. You're standing up for what you believe in, for what you've accomplished in the industry. And I get that. Listen, and I'm not taking it out of the way. That for what you guys have accomplished is 10 times more than what CM Punk wishes he could accomplish. But at the end of the day, you got to take that with a grain of salt because he's your employee and your executives. You're executives under a profession, and you wonder why you guys got suspended. But at the same time, Punk should have, hopefully Punk doesn't return to AEW. I'm sorry to say this. A lot of people will probably be upset, but I sure hope Punk does not return to AEW just because, and I hope that he doesn't return to wrestling, period. I mean, if I'm WWE, I wouldn't allow Punk back in. If I'm AEW, I wouldn't allow Punk back in just because right now he draws the negative attention. And, I'm sorry, Tony Kahn, but you're not the NBA and you're not the NFL, and handling these negative attentions is not your strong suit. You're not Bill Belichick. You're not, Jerry Jones. So trying to take care of this type of business is not in your strong suit just yet, I would say, as far as I would say. And then last night we see confrontation with Andrade and Sammy Guevara. And in my opinion, is what the hell is going on backstage? It seems like now every month or so, there's another altercation. And there shouldn't be an altercation. Now, both of them got sent home and matches got suspended and got postponed. And, it's a bad image on on AEW because now it shows and it seems like there's no control. There's no authority being put in place in the locker room, behind the scenes. There's been earlier this year, there was a big report about AEW being one of those about the veterans speaking out on AEW saying that, hey, these younger guys are going to do whatever they want. They don't care. They're not really listening to the elders, to the veterans. And it's very disturbing. And so yet again, we see we see another two, maybe, they got sent home for suspension that involves into the matches that were supposed to be, given last night. And it really, in my opinion, ruins and starts hurting the business when you have to go to this extreme measurements. And when this is a repetition among other athletes, you've seen, there's been, rumors about confrontations with Chris Jericho, Andrade, MJF. There's stuff in the background, in the backstage area. I'm like, dude, just come in, do your job, and that's it. Leave. Simple as that. They should keep it in the ring, and maybe there should be a time for that in the ring, but come on. You're starting to hurt the business that is paying you, that's feeding you, that's giving you putting the bread on your table. And I think that's just a little unacceptable. So we'll see how this is involved over the next few weeks. We'll, obviously pay attention to what's next, but it's frustrating to see this on a daily basis. I mean, Tony Kahn pulls Andrade El Idolo versus Preston 10 Vance from AEW Rampage. Trios title match will take its place. And I mean, greater opportunities from some of these other athletes, but I mean, come on. This is, people come out and they want to see Sammy Guevara. They want to see Andrade. And when you go pull these stunts, people don't want to see you. People can't see you. And then that way you can't build yourself. But I digress. All right. Hey, Extreme Rules is coming up, and we're going to talk heavily about it tomorrow. I want to talk about the matches tomorrow. I want to know from you guys tomorrow what match should be the main event. Now, I think, this show has already succeeded in the fact that, hey, there's stipulations. Now, whether or not they pull off these stipulations, but a ladder match, a fight pit match, an Extreme Rules match. And over the last few weeks, we've seen on both ends, Raw and SmackDown, that they're really starting to express, even in NXT, they're really starting to express the notion of, hey, this is going to be an all-out brawl. And I really think, in my opinion, and tell me if I'm wrong, that WWE needs something like this. All right, I think they need something like this twice a year. And I don't think you have to name a pay-per-view or a premium live Extreme Rules. in order to make this, a stipulation or a Hell in a Cell, right? I mean, you just need to have this scattered throughout the year. And now we see an I Quit match. We're seeing, and let's not forget about next week's Halloween Havoc, where we see an ambulance match. And I like to throw that in as part of the whole title long. I like to see that on the, listen, this is what I would like to see. Okay. I would like to see kickoff shows, right? Where they usually have a match or two, be from NXT, right? Bring up the new talent, let them perform a little bit in front of that crowd before the actual show begins. But overall, we have ourselves a great pay-per-view. We see Judgment Day. Now, here's my concern, all right? And I think we go back around in circles because we've been saying this from the beginning of the year, is that, I have mixed thoughts. I have mixed emotions. We'll talk about this a little bit. But AEW, but when it comes out of WWE, when you start using guys like Edge and Rey Mysterio and AJ Styles, and that's great. They're all fantastic talent. They're all great guys for younger talent to come in and take a point to. I love what Judgment Day's been doing with them, the trio there. But, realistically, you're trying to take them up for your show, and they're just, they're only going to be able to provide you with so much entertainment. You're only going to sell so much seats, and when is it time for, especially a guy like Edge, to really hang up the boots? I'm sorry, just hang up the boots, my man. I appreciate it. I love you. You're a great athlete, but let's not get over carried with ourselves. But what match do you think should be the main event? Is it the triple threat? Is it the 6-man tag match, brawling match? Is it the fight pit? I'm telling you right now, Edge and Finn Balor, great chemistry. Now, if it was Edge and AJ Styles, I think that would be 10 times better. But, Edge and Finn Balor, I think we'll have to do. And I think this has been something that, Edge has been wanting to work with Balor as of recent. And I get that, right? This is just something that, Edge is... the fans know his career is starting to wind down, starting to be over, and I get that. All right. Well, hey, listen, I digress. This is our plan. I got high school football tomorrow. I got the playoffs tomorrow. I got NFL week 5 picks coming your way. Like I said, I've already picked the Denver Broncos, and I'll explain more about that tomorrow and where our standings are. I would also give you my pick and also give you the match card for Extreme Rules, getting you guys ready for SmackDown that night as well. Been a busy week, a lot busier to come. Let's come back tomorrow and wrap up a great, amazing week. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys miss any episode, be sure to check us out on all audio streaming platforms, and make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button as well. All right. Hey, this wraps up our show. Until tomorrow, I'm Justin. This is The Throw-In. You guys are listening to the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. See you guys tomorrow.